Okay guys, we're at St. Patrick's new cathedral in Rockefeller Center in New York City. And yeah, on Fifth Avenue.
Hey guys, so today I'm giving a quick overview of the history of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. So basically in the mid 1800s, Archbishop John Hughes proposed building a major cathedral in what was then mostly empty Midtown. People thought it was unrealistic. Some even called it Hughes' folly, but he believed in the growing Catholic community and that they needed a landmark of their own. Okay guys, now we're moving on to construction. Construction began in 1858, but it did slow down during the Civil War. But thankfully, it did finally open in 1879. And the design, it was designed by James Renwick Jr. in the Gothic Revival style. And it features marble walls, stained glass windows, and two spires that were completed in 1888. And it rises nearly 330 feet, so that's pretty cool. And then over the next century, additions like the Lady Chapel and several major restorations, mostly in the 2010s though, helped preserve the building. And then while I toured the cathedral, I saw many statues and shrines of many different saints, and I'm going to show you my experiences with that.
Okay, Mr. Costelli, this is St. John the Baptist's statue.
Okay, so that was the shrine of St. John the Baptist, and I'm going to give you a little background summary about him for context. So he was a Jewish prophet in the 1st century, and he was pretty well known for preaching repentance and moral renewal and the coming of God's kingdom. So yeah, one of his prophets, and he was the son of Zechariah and Elizabeth, and he lived an ascetic life and became famous for baptizing people in the Jordan River as a symbol of spiritual cleansing. And he's actually best known for his baptizing Jesus. So he's the one who actually baptized Jesus Christ in the Jordan River and prepared the way for his ministry. So that's kind of how he became famous in our teachings today. He was an outspoken criticism of Herod and his unlawful marriage, and this basically led And so John is actually an outspoken critic of Herod's unlawful marriage, and this eventually led to his imprisonment and then eventual beheading later on. He also was revered in Christianity as the forerunner of Christ and honored in Islam as the prophet, so he kind of swings both ways. And John the Baptist remains one of the most influential religious figures of his time, so that's a little background about him, and I thought it would be interesting to share all the shrines that I saw.
That's the statue where Jesus speaks to me. You could do it. Sorry. To my daughters.
No, I don't think so.
What?
It has all of it though.
And then this is when Jesus dies for the 3rd time. And then this is when they took his clothes off. They stripped him of his garments.
Nice.
Okay guys, this is St. John the Evangelist, and he was actually called the theologian because of the intellectual dimension of his work. He's a very smart man.
Okay, so that was the shrine of St. John the Evangelist, and a fun fact about him and a little summary is that he is one of Jesus' 12 apostles, and he's the brother of James, and he's traditionally believed to be the author of the Gospel of John. And he's also believed to be the author of the 3 New Testament letters and the book of Revelation, so that's pretty cool. He's a very well-known writer, and he's a very well-written guy. And he's also known as the disciple whom Jesus loved, and he was part of Jesus's kind of inner circle, and so that means he witnessed key events after Jesus's resurrection and the transfiguration, the crucifixion, But then after the resurrection, John actually became a major leader in the early church, even later living in Ephesus, and according to tradition, he received the visions of Revelation while exiled on the island of Patmos. And actually, unlike other apostles, he's said to have died peacefully in old age, so he wasn't martyred or stuck up for his faith. Even though he didn't die doing that. So his legacy really just centers deep on his teachings about love, light, and the divinity of Christ. Okay, this is Saint Lorenzo, and she is the patron saint of the Filipino youth in the Philippines. Okay, so that was Saint Lorenzo's shrine, and he's actually pretty newly added to the cathedral, and I'm gonna give you a little background after I share what's going on in this photo. So this is the mass celebrating his and welcoming him into the church for his new statue. So Saint Lorenzo was a 17th century Filipino layman who became the first Filipino saint, so that's pretty cool. And he was born in Manila, and he was of mixed Filipino and Chinese descent. And he also worked as a calligrapher in the church, so that's basically the people who write with the cool ink and pen thing. But unfortunately, he was falsely accused of involvement in murder. So he was like, yeah, I don't mess with that. So he fled to Japan with the missionaries from the Dominican Republic, and that's where Christianity was outlawed, though. So he was arrested for his faith and unfortunately endured severe torture, and then he was ultimately martyred in Nagasaki in Japan because he refused to renounce Christianity. So he's sticking up for himself and he's sticking up for the faith. And he was canonized in 1987 by Pope John Paul II, and he's remembered for his unwavering faith, courage, and devotion to God. And he is the patron saint of the Philippines and Filipino migrants. And then, kind of just to wrap up this project, I thought I would include one of my favorite photos I took of my trip. This is the section of the church that they sectioned off for Jesus, and it showed a photo of him and then a statue of him being crucified. And I just really thought it was beautiful and really symbolized Christianity as a whole.